Life can be chaotic. If you're running a retail business, don't let disorganized order fulfillment add to the chaos. Use ShipStation instead. With ShipStation, you never have to worry about shipping and fulfillment again. Whether you're running a business out of your garage or you have multiple warehouses, ShipStation is ideal for every phase of your business's growth. Save time with one login for all your stores and by automating repetitive tasks. Plus, you'll save money with the best shipping rates from global carriers. ShipStation's industry-leading features help you deliver a better customer experience. They'll get accurate and faster shipments along with automated tracking updates with your branding. And with up to 88% off UPS and USPS rates and up to 90% off FedEx rates, ShipStation is the fastest and most affordable way to ship. Calm the chaos. Switch to ShipStation today. Start a free trial at shipstation.com/audio. That's shipstation.com/audio.
Here in America, work is in trouble. We've offshored our manufacturing, sent away good jobs, and lost so much ability to make things. American Giant is a company that's pushing back against this tide. They make high-quality clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more right here in the USA. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com. Promo code STAPLE20.
Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews, it's your number one source. Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 324 of Sports Card Nation. The conclusion of our interview with Michael Dault, the director of Hobby Hustle. Great movie. We're going to talk more about the film and the process, but we're going to talk hobby as well. So I'm going to keep the intro short and sweet. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more from Michael Dault, director of Hobby Hustle. Hey everybody, I want to take a quick minute to tell you about a product I use every morning. It's 2.6 little shot, 12 ingredients. It's called Magic Mind. My friend turned me on to it, fellow teacher at school. It's green tea, some of the ingredients, green tea, olive oil, passion fruit, and all natural. So FDA approved. It's got 55 milligrams of caffeine, and I notice when I take it in the morning, my mind's sharper, I'm calm, and I'm ready to go. When you're dealing with high school kids, that's always important. It's full of antioxidants and it has some immunity support. It's a nootropic, and that's not my thing, but I tell you what, this product may have changed my mind. I know I talk a little bit about it each week, but I do love and actually use the product. So the company was generous enough to give you a 45% off discount code, which you can find in the episode notes. So check it out. Magic Mind, one a day works for me. It can work for you as well.
Hi, I'm Isaac Albert, a longtime card collector and the co-founder of the Penny Sleever. My wife and I started the Penny Sleever with a simple premise in mind: to offer collectors top quality supplies at fair prices. We offer a full range of hobby supplies and we'll get them to you fast. Whether you're looking for a 260-point magnetic for that oversized patch card or a slew of semi-rigids for your next PSA submission, the Penny Sleever has you covered. Shop now at thepennysleever.com and use the promo code SCNation to get 10% off your first order. That's SCNation for 10% off at thepennysleever.com. The Penny Sleever. Top quality supplies, fair prices.
And now for the conclusion of our conversation with Michael Dault and his new hobby film, Hobby Hustle. Check the movie out. A good crux of this portion of the conversation is talking about Cliff Panarich, who was the forger, and along with friends, and got his mother involved. So, very interesting storyline. We're going to kind of deep dive here, and some other things as well. Enjoy.
even with eBay, as much as I use eBay, and
Yep.
I wanted to talk to them about, during watching during Operation Stolen Base, which was in the documentary, they kept all those fees that, off all those fraudulent transactions of, the autographs that were forged and everything. They still never gave back those fees. And I wanted to ask them about it. I wasn't trying to be a jerk about it. I just didn't want eBay to be like, oh, we did nothing wrong. We see hear no evil, see no evil. But at the same time, it's like, well, you still kept those fees. And I wanted to ask them. And when I approached them, I wanted to, and they were like, no, we're not going to talk. And it's like, okay, well, that's why I brought Sports Card Radio in on that, because they're kind of very polarizing, and I knew they'd be polarizing, and they do talk about a lot of bad things that are in the hobby. But I also wanted people to understand their perspective of why they do, because as I shot this documentary, I kept uncovering more and more, and it was just unbelievable. So it's kind of cool that they're kind of on top of it, right? And they agreed with me. I mean, as much as PSA and JSA are needed companies, I do think there needs to be something that governs them. Now, that's just my opinion, because they set the market, they set the price points, they set there's only going to be so many mint gem 10s of a certain LeBron or whatever, and I think there needs to be somebody to kind of put them in check too. But that's just maybe a bigger talk for another day. For sure.
Yeah, no, I'll give you my short. I kind of agree with that, and then with the financial aspect of the billions of dollars that are exchanged, right? Lesser stuff is regulated, if you will. So, I know people don't, me included, right? We want sort of less cover a lot of times.
Yes.
And that regulation can be a loaded word that, some people like and other people despise. But, I guess I'll say this, if it can be done the right way and it works, that I would
100%.
support that, right? Because even sometimes with regulation, that can backfire too. So as long as there's a plan that does more good than bad, if you love the hobby, right, you want more good than bad. So I would support that. But right now, as you well know, and as the film kind of, it's sort of like, not sort of, it is really the Wild Wild West. While you do have some sheriffs trying to do the right thing, there again, without regulation and a body that sort of oversees that, there's a Wild Wild West aspect to it. And you did that with highlighting the Operation Stolen Base and Cliff Panner. I think I'm saying his name right, Pannerich. And I appreciate you mentioned, like, you had the both sides of that coin, right? You had the prosecution side, you had the defendant side. He was convicted. He pled guilty and served time and came up. But that's important to talk about. And you touched more than touched on that, and you touched on even some thefts and burglaries and alteration, and you really, that's why I said you covered a lot of the stuff that we need to talk about if we're going to really tell the true story of where the hobby is, where it was, maybe even where it's going, right? And I knew about that case and I knew about some of the players, but you really opened it up to, like, fill in a lot of the blanks that even people who followed that case or that story, you really deep dived in. So obviously I learned a lot and didn't realize how lucrative of a business, and then how many tentacles and people actually became involved. A lot of times you hear with this stuff and it's just a couple of people. This thing kind of grew and got big, and whether you like it or not, and I don't like it. He obviously was a criminal, but he was very good at what he did. Like, he illustrated, like, he's literally doing people's autograph on like a whiteboard to a T. Like, you're just saying, hey, do this, and he's just muscle memory. Like, he doesn't even have to think about it, and just it's criminal. But there's a part of me watching that, Mike. I kind of feel guilty saying this. That's, I think you know what I'm about to say. Like, that's incredible. Like, it's bad, but it's incredible. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like at the same time. And
Yeah.
I wish that stuff didn't happen, but to be that kind, bad craft, but to be a wizard of your craft, even on the bad side,
Yeah.
there's a small part of me that said he did his homework,
Yeah.
and
Impressive.
while I'm not admiring it, I admired the dedication. I admired the dedication,
Yeah.
although it falls on the wrong side of the law, right? And I think we all, we all have that little side of us, like Billy the Kid, right? Not a good guy, but there's a part of us that's sort of like the little rebel in all of us, right? Man, like that's pretty funny, or that's interesting to say the least. He definitely came to me. Obviously, I saw him on film. You had a lot of conversation with him that probably didn't make in the film.
Oh,
He
tons.
came off kind of smug, a little bit cocky, but maybe that comes from just for as long as he got away with it, how big it got. Kind of your thoughts on that part of the film, and again, you did a great job. I like that you included again the prosecuting side to it and the law enforcement side too, because there's two sides to every story, right?
There is.
And like you said, as a journalist, you didn't want it to be one-sided. Some of your thoughts to this part of the film.
Yeah, I mean, with Cliff, Cliff is a hard person to like, not just in the film, but in person. And it's kind of, I look at his story of kind of Shakespearean, right? I mean, he's trying so hard to be something, which in the film, he's trying to be a pro baseball player. He thought that's where he was going to end up. And he wanted to live that lifestyle of a pro baseball player, of a pro athlete. But then he found out he's actually even better at something else that's a more dubious honor, or not even an honor, just a dubious craft, which he goes on that side. And then it totally brings him into the underbelly, the seedy underbelly of the hobby. So, which he has this big fall from grace. And I wanted, when I knew I wanted, because when I talked to him, so it was really hard to get a hold of him at first. Prisons have this system called JPay, where you can video chat or email a convict or an inmate. And I used that. And then I found his mom. Cliff was trying to run some businesses outside of prison through his mom, Rose Panizich, and legit businesses, like I think apparel and just like little side hustles that I don't think they were really going anywhere. But I found an email on there. I reached out to her. Her and I swapped some emails and phone numbers, and then we started talking. And then Cliff started responding to the JPay emails I was giving him, and I came across Cliff as being very humble. And I thought, this guy needs a redemption story. This is his redemption. I want to film the redemption story. I will say, and I'm not trying to be mean, but the Cliff I met in prison, we went to prison, we talked to him. He came across he was different. He seemed to be humble. He seemed to be very apologetic. The Cliff I met in prison was completely different of the Cliff that we filmed when he got released. I mean, you saw a guy that instantly wants to be famous. He wants to, when he got released from prison, he wanted to be famous. He wanted, there was just a different air to him. And that's not to say he's a bad guy, because I don't think he's a bad guy, but I got at odds with where I wanted the documentary to end because, like I said, he's a hard person to like, and I wanted to leave the redemption story up to the audience. Do they think he was redeemed? And do they? Because I do show high points and low points. And Cliff's motivations, like he's very mad at the law. I mean, he's very mad at the legal system that brought him down. They thought there was some shenanigans on their parts. And he wanted the documentary to reflect that. And I told him from the beginning, I said, Cliff, I want to show the crime you did, and I want to show both sides of it. But the law stuff, we can mention it, but I don't want to stick with the law side of it. Or I mean, how they brought you down and how you think they done him up, because it's very cloudy and it's very everything he said. I had proof from their end, and it was just really hard. And I knew that's where he wanted to go, but I told him from the beginning that's not where we're going with this. We're not going to about your case. We're going to the crime. So Cliff says this really. Cliff, he was apologetic in prison, and then outside of prison, he was never apologetic. He, as you see in the film, I want to give it away, but there was, yes, I did the crime, and there's a lot of buts, right?
Yeah.
And he says this quote in the documentary that is kind of haunting to me as a collector, and and I want to know if you caught this quote. He says, "Let them be oblivious." He was talking about kids collecting and about if kids knew if they were collecting something fake, how they would feel, or should we tell them? And he said, "Let them be oblivious." To this day, that still kind of sticks with me, and I have my own thoughts on that. But like, what are your thoughts on that? Like when he has that comment, like, you know, if kids knew what was going on, they wouldn't want to collect, and there's so much money involved. And he says it's just easier just to let them be oblivious, and he thinks that's the way it should be. What did you catch that?
Yeah, I did. It's funny you mentioned that quote. I did catch it, Michael, and I didn't like it. Right? I think, I think it shows there's still. I'm not saying he's going to do another forgery ring, but I think it still shows sort of a disingenuous side of him. Like, it almost like he didn't say that. I'll ask you sort of. I almost felt like he wasn't remorseful. It's the old cliche, right? I'm remorseful that I got caught, not that I did it.
Yes.
And I think that line sort of, for me, in my opinion, sort of cements my thought about it. And I didn't realize this until talking to you here today, that sort of, again, he was a little more brazen, like with the stuff you shot once he was released. But that, I thought while watching it in real time, I thought, well, he's free. He's enthusiastic. He's glad to see the light of day.
Yeah.
His mom. And I'm like, maybe that's just kind of coming through. But in talking to you, who had multiple hours of conversation, and you say, hey, he was really a different, like these were two different dudes. There's prison Cliff and then out of prison Cliff. That sort of, I was wondering about that. Like, is that it's hard to tell from a 2 hour plus, and obviously that the whole movie wasn't about Operation Base, but it's like maybe I'm being too harsh, like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe he's out, he's confident, like he's trying to change his life. So it's hard to like judge. Plus he really, I try not to judge if I don't have to. Or,
I'm the same way.
If I can. And so I'm like, I don't want to be a jerk about this, but in kind of hearing you say, nah, these, in my dealings with him, it's kind of two different things. I thought to myself at different points and watching him speak and the others, like I thought, is this someone who could like go back there again and do it again, or maybe even something different, but along the same lines, and just try to be more careful and not get caught. And I couldn't like say to myself, the little voice in my own head, I couldn't with confidence say like, no, I think he learned his lesson.
Yeah,
there'll be no future issues. And I know that sounds terrible to say, and you like to give people the benefit of the doubt, or I try to, but I didn't get that. But because like you said, there were a lot of buts, right? Rather than just say, hey man, I made a bad mistake. Like I'm not as bad as the things I did, but I did them, but I learned, and I'm going to be a better this and a better that. And I didn't get a lot of that. Like you said, there was a lot of sort of add-ons to like, I messed up, but, or this was, or a little bit of justification. And that's where I said, like, it's almost like the door's still open. Like, hey, if am I smarter next time, I can do this again. I didn't say that, obviously, but it was just, to me reading between the lines, I got a little bit of that. And I remember saying, I hope that I'm wrong. I hope he doesn't, His biggest downfall was the people he associated with. Because two things I learned about Cliff while filming this, he's incredibly smart, like very, very smart. And two, he loves his mom more than anything. Like he'll do anything for that lady. She was a very nice lady. But he, how do I say this? He always said she had nothing to do with it. But then you start seeing in the documentary and the interviews, she had a little bit more to do with it than she said she did. He said, I have everything that the detectives gave me. I have tons of pages of the interrogations, of the questions and everything, the depositions, and his mom wasn't as innocent as he's making her out to be. And I get he's trying to defend his mom, and I think that I don't know. And with Cliff, it's interesting because now
he's in this I want to be famous thing with social media, and now he's kind of going back to gambling, and gambling's kind of what started him on the path of going the wrong way. So I really hope he can turn it around, because there are pockets of heart that you see. There was pockets of heart when I interviewed him, when I talked to his coach, his mom, anybody who knew him, his former associate. There's pockets of heart, but everybody who spoke well of him also had something negative to say about him too. So it seems like you get the both good and bad of Cliff, and it's just, I don't know. I think he needs to he's going to have to write his own story or finish his story, and it's how I don't know how it's going to be.
I was about to say that, Michael, like you talked about the redemption side of this particular segment.
Yeah.
He's going to really determine that, right, by what he does in the future, you know. But you did you did a great job with the family aspect, right? His dad passing away and him not really being there in the same, you know, way. And, you know, his dad being an honorable guy, served his country, right? And then the son sort of, hate to say it like this, but sort of dishonoring his father's legacy by his actions. But here's mom's still around, and regardless of how big of a role she played in the scheme, she was involved more than like he wanted to be known. But you know, you still respect a son's love for his mom, and he, like you said, I get sort of why he sort of tried to shield her from blame. And now he served his time. He's out, right? He gets to spend, you know, the time with his mom. She's not, you know, super young, obviously. So, you know, there is that redemptive quality that, you know, you sort of get a second chance, and you just hope, you know, that's the takeaway I took, is like, you hope he doesn't blow like the second chance. Right. And that's where he writes his own kind of history.
He there was stuff, I mean, like I said, when I cut out a lot of stuff to just kind of compact this in, there's stuff I didn't even show in the documentary about Cliff that, you know, him and I, we've had it out, you know, through the process, and it was kind of like a, you know, head to head on a lot of different stuff. And because he wants his story to be told right, but on the flip side of it, you know, when you tell him the truth, he doesn't want to hear the truth, and he wants you to side with him, blah, blah, blah. There's stuff I cut out. I mean, from mob connections to stuff his mom has done. And you know, there's so much I cut out because I wanted to show the story as the Operation Stolen Base. I didn't want all these side stuff, because then you're getting into more of like, right, John, you're getting into that series. You're getting into like a series kind of feel. And I knew I couldn't do that. And I wanted to keep everything packed into keep everybody's mind on Operation Stolen Base. I didn't want to go off on these little side tangents, you know, of their story. So, but there was a lot I cut out of Cliff's story that, I mean, just stuff that, holy crap, man. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I don't know if you can answer it. I'll ask if you can't.
Sure.
Do you know, has he seen the film himself?
So he's seen an early cut of his story. I didn't show him the whole film. And, you know, he liked it at first. He really liked it. And then he got mad once his mom seen it, because his mom didn't like the way she was depicted. And I said, well, I'm telling the story. I also, you know, because even when the detective and, you know, FBI and everybody's saying, okay, she was a part of it, I also have her saying she didn't know anything about it. So I'm not really pointing fingers like you did this. I'm having two people say, one person say what they did and another person say what they did. He gets mad because, and he said this from the beginning, he always said it's time for him to tell his story, and he doesn't want the law to have their side of the story because they're always telling their side of the story. But I said, Cliff, I can't do that because I can't just have it one way, because then it's not true. And he agreed. I mean, we have the agreements and everything in place, but he was always fighting that aspect of it, which led to a lot of heated stuff between him and I. So he ended up going to try to sell his story elsewhere because he's out of prison at this point. So he wanted to sell his story. Now, mind you, this is a little more inside baseball. When I contacted him in prison, nobody was talking to Cliff. I don't think Cliff had any friends. I think it was just he was focused on getting out and taking care of his mom as soon as he got out, and that was it. And as soon as he got out, he was like, oh, wow, look at all these people making money on social media, TikTok, everything.
Yeah.
He wants to do the same thing. So he was shopping his story around, and I didn't even know about it. I was actually trying to finish his story up. I remember I was in Columbus and I was trying to finish his story up, and I just got done filming the interview with his attorney, Percy Squire. And there's a lot that went down in Columbus. I remember my dog got stolen out of my car. It was this whole thing. I won't go into it. But when I found out, I get this call from a producer, and the producer says, hey, are you filming Cliff's story, in so many words? And I said, yeah. Why? And he goes, oh, because we paid Cliff for the rights to his story. I'm like, wait, what? Like, what's going on right now? I said, I've been with Cliff since 2019. I mean, he already signed. Yeah. Good, man. So Cliff was shopping this story around anywhere he could, because the thing is, he's like, oh, I gave you the sweetheart deal, when I was in prison and didn't have, a voice. And I'm like, well, that's not fair. You agreed to it. This is, and then he found out I wasn't telling the story the way he wanted to tell it. So that's when we started butting heads more. And this was after his stuff was all done being filmed.
Yeah.
But he loved the initial cut, John. He loved it. And he gave me props, and he loved the way it ended. And then once his mom viewed it, she got sad because he didn't like the way she was depicted. And then he blew up on me. And then that's kind of where we're at right now, where he was just, I don't know. I think he shot some of that documentary. I don't know what's going on with his other documentary, but I told him, I said, well, I told Cliff two things. I said, to tell your story, you need to tell both sides of it. So I don't know how this other producer is going to do it without you getting mad. And two, I said, you hate that I call you the mastermind of Operation Stolen Base, but on social media, he's flaunting him as mastermind behind it. So I said, Cliff, I'm making this documentary. You signed the paperwork. I'm going through with it. And I did. And I said, this is just how it's going to happen. I mean, this is just how it's going to happen. And so after that, we haven't talked for months since then. But he like I said, liked it at first. And then once his mom seen it, didn't like it.
Well, I think you did it the right way, right? You got to show both sides. If you would have did it where it was just him and his mom, right?
Yeah.
While there'd be some elements of truth in there for sure.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be 100% of that. And people would pick that apart. You know what I mean? Like, oh, man, you just, I think and here's the thing. I'm not saying, mom is the Antichrist here, but like, what the evidence was presented, what evidence they have to, if I know that, I'm probably not going to be talking to you saying I had no clue what was going on or, when there's stuff that's in dockets and in files that show the opposite of that, right? I might say no comment, or, my role was very, very small on the grand scheme of all this, but to just blatantly say I wasn't involved when there's evidence, that's on them. Like you didn't do, you know what I mean? Like you can say, they can say whatever they want, right? But they know what was presented.
That's exactly
whether it was presented in court or in the files that they're aware of that led to a pleading.
Yeah.
And that stuff, it's not sealed. Like it's going to come out if need be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you can take the stance, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like that's not, but someone else is saying, hey, here's what we know. Here's what we observed. Here's what we surveilled. And here's, talking to, people involved. They had these interactions with so-and-so on these dates. And so like, it's the proof's in the pudding, as the old cliche goes. And so I think it would have been, I think I would have respected it more if she had said, like, I don't want to talk about, I love my son. I did, for the love of my son. Like, even if she didn't go into detail, but to like not really say, hey, I don't know what was going on, and when that's sort of disingenuous. I would have probably respected her more if she just said, like, I was the really small figure on this chessboard, and I was just because I love my son, and leave it at that. But to like, it just reminds me of the Rafael Palmeiro, testifying in Congress and pointing like, I did not do, and then all the everyone else saying like, I injected him. So it had that element to it. I think I would have I would have rather, and not that she's doing it for me, but I would have rather her say like,
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about that. Let's, I'll talk about Cliff and what happened there, or that sort of stuff. But when you category deny something and then evidence sort of shows not the case, then I think it looks worse than if you just say no comment, or even if you downplay your own, just say, hey, I was really a very, very, I was a pawn on this chessboard. I wasn't the rook or the bishop. I respect that even more. Like she's not claiming 100% innocent. She just doesn't want to deep dive in details of that.
Yeah, and she's a very nice lady, but like I said, I told both sides, and that's just where it ended. I told both sides, and, at the end of the day, if he wants to tell a different story, go ahead with that other documentary, man. But like I said, I don't even know the status of that one. And I remember even talking to the producer who was behind the documentary, and I said, and him and I had a couple conversations because we thought we were both being had at this time, and he had a lot of things to say about Cliff too. He's just like, yeah, this guy's not remorseful. And I said, well, good luck if you're filming that, because it's just his truth is going to be shown on camera and he can't run from it. And I think to this day, until he fully accepts what he did fully, I don't think he'll ever find peace, and that's just my thoughts on him on that.
You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Iron Sports Cards is your number one source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
We are back.
One last question pertaining to this. I was a little surprised that he was like, he seemed to me, I'll let you answer this. You were there. He seemed a little too enthusiastic about, when he was showing you examples of how he could sign different athletes, so forge their signatures on the board. He seemed sort of a little too proud for me. Like on one hand, I just said earlier in our conversation, like there was a part of me that sort of was like, wow, he kind of mastered a craft, even even though it's illegal, like he did. But to me, he seemed a little too eager to like, hey, watch this kind of thing, like hold my beer, watch. Did that surprise you or not really, because you had already like sort of heard previous conversation?
It didn't surprise me just because at that time when you're talking about when he was signing on the whiteboard at the end? Yeah. So when he was doing that, he was basically following my instruction. He wanted to, because at first I said, hey, can you sign some stuff on like a notebook or a paper? And he goes, yeah, I'm not doing that, because he goes, I just got out of prison. If they know I was signing fake stuff, that could easily be taken. He goes, I'm like, no, that's true, man. That's true. And he came up with the idea of the whiteboard. I said, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And I think he was doing it at the end off the direction of me and the guy and TJ Penton, who was doing the cinematography on that one.
Yeah.
So I think he was kind of focused on that. And every time we talked about the signatures, you could tell it was, the best way I can describe it, John, is talking to old World War II or Vietnam vets, where they're proud of their country, they're proud of their service, and they'll talk about it with kind of like remembering some days, but then there's stuff they don't want to remember. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they're kind of very like closed off when they're talking about it. And that's kind of how it came across with Cliff, because that led to bigger conversations. So I think he knew he was good. And I think he knew like, okay, this could go into more, but yeah, that stuff at the end was totally just off direction. And if it was him like living that, like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm sure there was some sense of like, I'm really good at this, but at the same time, it wasn't that surprising, because at that point in filming him, he was already like, look at me. He was wanting us to take pictures in front of cars that weren't his. And it was just weird. He was just, like I said, the Cliff in prison was different than the Cliff out of prison. But I think to him, he was about, I want to start my new brand and things like that.
Yeah.
So he had this air about him when doing all that. So
yeah, that did come out. That did come out. But
Yeah.
you obviously saw a lot more in person than we
Yeah.
get to see in our living room. So
And
listen.
Yeah.
I think I speak for you here too. You correct me if I'm wrong. Like I'm rooting for him, like not to go down the wrong path, right? As a human being, like he may not be my favorite person.
Yep.
He served time in prison. It's not like he got off scot-free.
Yep.
Now I just hope, for the sake of even his own mom and himself, right, that he travels the right road and stays on the right path. And whether that's in apparel, like you said, or whatever, as long as it's above board and it's clean money, as they say. Like I'm not rooting against the guy. As for I think it's a bad place to be as a human, to root against another. Even bad ones. Like he didn't get off scot-free. He's out. Like now, if he does the right thing, like he didn't murder anyone either. Too. Let's while he did some really bad and unscrupulous stuff that cost people thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. He didn't kill anyone either. So you got to keep it in that sort of perspective.
Yeah. And there's like I said before, there's pockets of heart there, John, with him.
Yeah.
Things that I showed in the documentary, but things that weren't in the documentary that a lot of people don't know about Cliff. Cliff is always rooting for the underdog. One thing I really like about Cliff, and he still does this, he always helps friends out. That was kind of his downfall with Operation Stolen Bases, which he explains in the documentary. He goes, "Oh, I'm behind on a mortgage payment." Friends would come to him with all sorts of stuff, behind a car payment. There was even family members that would come to Cliff, his aunts and uncles, and because he was making money, and he would do these things for them because Cliff always felt like he had to take care of everybody. And he still has that. And Cliff doesn't do drugs. He's never did drugs. Yeah. Cliff, he'll take in people. There was some friends that fell on hard times. I mean, with drugs and alcohol, and he would always take them in and he would do, he would help turn their life around. So there's these pockets of Cliff that I know he'll become a good person. But I really do think once he fully accepts the fact that he did what he did, I don't think he'll ever find peace. I think he'll always kind of lead with anger. But there is a good person in there, for sure.
Yeah, and you did a great job in showing that aspect. It did come through in the film. Again, not to condone the criminal side, but in watching the film, one of the things I said is as this ring got bigger and this person was added, that voice in my head, I'm like, this is where this guy dropped the ball. It just got too big. There was no way it would succeed any longer. Like again, I'm not condoning crime, but just when you watch a movie, right? Say, oh man, that's where they screwed up, right?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, that's where they dropped the ball. That's what I took. Is like, man, if he would have kept this to really a small level with just minimal people, who knows how long he would have got it with it, right? I think it was when it's just, hey, you want to do this? Here's what you can do. And I'm like, it almost became a little amateur hour while he was not an amateur himself. I think there was an element of that in what happened. And I'm like, you could, like, if you didn't know how this ends, like it became very, very apparent. And and that's, someone gets caught and then they're going to roll over and like, hey, we'll give you either immunity or a lesser sentence. And if you tell us everything, and who's the head chef in the kitchen here. Yeah. And you can even though I knew about the story, like had I not, like you could see that was coming down down the tracks, and again, like you said, I think you put it eloquent. The redemption story is going to be written by Cliff himself, whether it is or it isn't. And I guess there's beauty in that, right? One way or the other. Like he's going to have no one else to blame. He'll either get the credit for being a redemption story, or he'll get the blame for not learning his lesson, and
Exactly.
he gets to control that sort of destiny, So
Absolutely.
I hope it's on the right side, rather than the wrong. I try not to root against people. So whether I like them or don't like them, I try to generally not root people. So
Yeah.
for the sake of his mom and the time he has left, I hope he does the right thing. But the way you presented that whole case, even though I knew quite a bit about it, it filled in a ton of blanks, and that was the first and I think for a lot of people, even who knew the case, that's the first I really heard from him. That voice. Whether you agree with everything he says or not, that was he did get to tell his side of the story. And I might believe some of it and not all of it, but he did get to tell it. And I thought that was refreshing, and I thought it was well done.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's a great movie. It's coming out February 16th. By the time you hear this part of the episode, it's out. Where for those listening, where can that want to view it? Michael, kind of tell people what they have to do, where they have to go.
Yeah, it's on Apple TV and Amazon. It will premiere on those on February 16th. So that's coming up pretty soon. And yeah, I mean that's where it will premiere. And then in the months following, I'm sure it will go elsewhere, and then just be on my social, just stay tuned to my social media at Michael J. Dault on Instagram and or my website, michaeldault.com. And yeah, there'll be a lot of updates on where it goes from there.
Well, listen, I legitimately appreciated and loved the film.
Thank you so much.
It's I always, and it's not whether I'm reading a book from an author that's coming on the show. This isn't the first movie I got to screen. I've been blessed and privileged. I always go in kind of open-minded. I don't want to I think sometimes if oh man, this is going to be you sort of set the bar too high, and then you don't want to do the opposite, right? Like this.
Yeah.
So I kind of go in hey, I don't know what to expect. I haven't seen this yet. So, and you just, like I said earlier too, you checked a lot of the boxes. To me, it's the best film that really shows what the true face of the hobby, good and bad.
Yeah.
And that's a good, it's a good thing that you did that. While we don't like as you illustrated, some people don't want to talk about the bad stuff all the time. I think we got to, because that's how you avoid the pratfalls or falling prey to it, is through education, right?
Absolutely.
And I think there's an education piece to the film as well, right? We can learn from this, right? What to look for, be careful. This is real. These things happen, and so I think people who see the film, especially that are familiar with the hobby, I think will feel much the same way, Michael. That this really didn't leave too many stones unturned, and that's not. It's easier said than done, and you did a great job with it. I'll put you. One last question. I'll put you on the hot seat before we say goodbye. You mentioned there's obviously footage that you can't get everything in the movie. Some stuff doesn't make it in. Might we see whether it's a part 2 or even just another hobby movie, maybe called something else? I mean, what can you say to that?
Yeah, I will say, I have all this footage that we cut out, and there's some good stuff. I mean, we interviewed other people. There's a couple more people that did some crimes that we interviewed that we just couldn't fit in. So yeah, I'm kind of going through my options right now. I kind of want to wait till the release of this and see how it's received, and then kind of go from there. And if there's, if anybody's open, if they want to see more, I would 100% want to tackle this again. Because one thing that's good about this hobby, John, which obviously, there's so many angles to this hobby. I mean, there's so many different,
and it changes
all the time, man.
I used to say, one of my lines I said, this hobby changes every couple years. It changes by the week now.
Yes.
The current edition of the hobby we're in now, every week there's something new, or there's a new wrinkle or new story, like the news cycle. You could do a monthly publication and not miss anything. You can't do a daily publication or a website and without missing something. So the news cycle is quick. There's new wrinkles, there's new innovations, technologies, and good stuff too. It's not
Great
even
stuff.
just the bad wrinkle, know. So I will say this. I'll be selfish, and I think other people who see this film will as great as it is, and knowing that there's more that you have, probably will say this was so great or so good. I want to see. So hopefully that's the case, and love to have you back, and we can do it all over again. Well, listen, great film. I'm not just saying that. I seen it. It's long in length, but like it's to me a mark of a good long movie is you don't realize the time until you look at the clock. Like a bad movie is like you keep looking at your watch and like how much longer?
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize the length until after it was already over. That to me, that's a mark of a good film. And you're not looking like how much time is left, or like this has got to be close. And the way you put it together, I think really kept me engaged and locked in. And I try to take notes if I'm screening.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was times when I probably should have been writing something down, and I'm like, no, I'm watching this. What's next, or what are they going to say now? And I'm like, oh, I missed my note, And I'll be honest with you, I rewound it a couple just to
cool.
Write something down. So very well done. You did you did your due diligence. You covered sort of all the angles, which I think is a true testament to where the hobby is, good and bad. And I think people are going to enjoy it like I did, and probably yearn for part 2 or another edition of it. So
absolutely, let's hope.
Yeah, there you go. Well, listen, continued success, Michael. Hobby Hustle is the film. Whether you're a longtime hobbyist like me or fairly new, it's really interesting, enthralling, and really shows kind of, again, all the aspects of what's going on. And again, you can learn. It's not just a documentary where you just watch it. I think you can learn some things. And if this old dog like myself can learn some stuff, that tells you a lot. So thanks again.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much, man.
All right, that's going to wrap up our conversation with Michael Dault. And again, great film. Check it out if you haven't. And if you missed part 1 of our conversation from the previous week, check that out as well. Just enjoyed talking about the film, talking about the hobby with Michael. So, he's a busy guy between the film coming out and interview requests. I appreciate him coming on.
Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
Sup everyone, it's Brody the Kid. Always remember, the hobby is the people. Peace out.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
That's a wrap for this week. Huge thanks to you, the listeners out there, because without you, there is no us. If you like the show, we truly appreciate positive reviews. Big ups to our great guests who drive the show and our awesome sponsors who make it all possible. Sports Card Nation will be back next week, but don't forget to catch either Hobby Quick Hits or Card Mentions coming up on Monday. I'll leave you with this. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. Remember, the hobby is the people.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.